Fight fans across the world have been eagerly awaiting this one since the day it was announced. Indeed, as this fight involves one of the greatest boxers of all time, the anticipation has been truly huge. Many had suspected that this boxer had actually already retired, which is what makes this fight even more of a shock to the fight world. But just what are we talking about exactly? That's right, you got this. This is Manny Pacquiao, the Pac-Man legend, versus Errol Spence Jr. Manny Pacquiao is arguably one of the greatest boxers of all time. Just take a look at him here. The way this man fights is absolutely extraordinary. To say that he has a sixth sense for the sport of boxing would be an understatement for sure. Look at the way this man moves. See the way he times his punches perfectly? At Fight World, we tend not to be superstitious, but Pacquiao seems to have a psychic's ability to always know what his opponent will do next. When you watch this man fight, there's a level of focus that can be seen on his face which is rarely exhibited in other boxers. It was almost as if this is what Pacquiao was born and designed for: insane boxing warfare. But at the age of 42 years, does he really still have what it takes to face off the current WBC and IBF welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr.? We're talking about one of the most elite welterweights out there right now. Well, to answer that question, we need to take a closer look into Pacquiao's boxing history. That said, it's difficult not to get lost when considering his outstanding fight record. This is a man who has 71 fights under his belt, 62 wins, and 39 by devastating knockout. Out of these 71 fights, the Pac-Man has only 2 draws and 7 losses. But who exactly did he lose to? This comes as no surprise to any seasoned fight fan out there. Most of us will remember perhaps one of the most legendary fights in all of boxing history, which, as it happens, was also one of the top pay-per-view boxing fights to have ever taken place, generating an estimated $4.6 million US. Which fight was this? That's right, you remember it well. This was the day Manny Pacquiao stepped in the ring with Floyd Mayweather Jr., the then undefeated 5-division world champion in the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Paradise, Nevada, 2015. In this fight, we saw both men exhibit some of the best boxing our planet has ever seen. As you could see here, both men moved like ninjas in the ring for a staggering 12 whole rounds. Fight fans across the world were given 12 whole rounds of elite-level boxing. In this fight of the century, Mayweather Jr. won the contest by unanimous decision, with 2 judges scoring it 116 to 112 and the other 118 to 110. Most expected Pac-Man to dominate the early rounds, since Mayweather had built a reputation for starting fights slowly as he feels out his opponent. But according to boxing critics, Mayweather had Pacquiao right where he wanted him from the opening bell. Mayweather actually decided to go on the offensive, peppering Pacquiao with blows while avoiding any substantial damage. Pacquiao had a brief flurry in the 4th round where he tagged Mayweather with consecutive substantial blows. But pretty soon it became apparent that anything short of a knockout would mean a win for Mayweather. His defense was on point and Pacquiao was chasing shadows. Pacquiao enjoyed a few more moments where he connected with the occasional shot on Mayweather and looked like he might turn the fight around. In the end, those were only brief respites as Mayweather sucked the life out of the clash and seemed to suffocate Pacquiao's offense. The thing is, for Pacquiao to lose against Mayweather is no huge failure. At the time, these were perhaps the best boxers on the planet, at least within their category for sure. There was even a rumor that Pacquiao had fought with an injured shoulder, which means we possibly didn't even see our Pac-Man at his best. If we compare that to Errol Spence Jr., well, let's take a look at his record. He currently boasts 27 fights, with 27 wins and 21 by annihilating knockout. All this at the tender age of 31 years. And that's right, you heard us correctly, so far 0 losses. Just take a look at how Spence dealt with his most recent opponent here. This was when Spence dealt with the infamous Danny Garcia back in 2020. 2 judges scored it 116 to 112 for Spence, with the other at 117 to 111. This was Spence's third title defense on his home turf, and Spence went the distance for the third straight time to beat Garcia, who boasts a whopping 36 fights, 21 knockouts, and now only 3 losses. The first 2 rounds were mostly quiet until Garcia appeared to throw and land a left hook just after the bell ended the second. Garcia appeared to slip early in the third, with the referee signaling it was not a knockdown. Garcia did not appear hurt, but did need treatment for a small cut on the bridge of his nose after the third. Spence tried to attack through the middle rounds, with Garcia ducking under a few of the harder punches while grazing Spence's head with a wild right hook as the Texan leaned back to avoid the swing late in the 5th round. Both fighters landed several punches in the most intense stretch to that point in the middle of the 8th round. Spence pinned Garcia on the ropes with a series of blows before Garcia escaped and steadied before the end of the round. Overall, we thought this fight was a fantastic display of Errol Spence Jr.'s insane boxing ability. You can see here he dominated most of the fight with excellent movement and footwork. This guy is young, fresh, and efficient. Even when conceding punches, Spence shows he has a strong chin and is able to retain composure throughout the rounds. This is pretty evident in almost all Spence's fights. We can consistently see the same ability to hit hard and rarely get hit back. Spence's punches tend to connect with pretty dramatic effect, bludgeoning his opponents with a force that wears them down round after staggering round. It's pretty obvious that Spence is a force to be reckoned with and not an opponent to be taken lightly. So how will this match up against our Pac-Man legend? It's hard to say. Obviously, there is the initial age difference, which is pretty dramatic. We all know that age plays a significant role in boxing, and in fact, many claim this is what led to Klitschko's losses to both Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua in previous years. One could argue this is a good example of what happens when a boxing legend grows old. They simply cannot match up against the division's fresh, hungry upstarts. But given Manny Pacquiao's boxing prowess, do we really believe this man will be bettered by a young champion like Errol Spence Jr.? Especially given that this time, Pacquiao will have no shoulder injury and will no doubt be entering the ring in the best possible condition he could be in. Well, Errol Spence Jr. will be no walk in the park for sure, and Pacquiao will do well to remember that Spence has yet to lose a fight. But with a staggering 62 fights under his belt, experience may just see Pacquiao come out on top. I mean, let's be real. At this point, he's seen it all before. Been there, done that, and knocked out the t-shirt. There are rumors about what might happen if Pacquiao wins this one. Some claim that Pacquiao may be looking for a win here so that he can go on to set up a rematch with his former rival Floyd Mayweather Jr. It's hard to say whether this would ever happen, given that Mayweather has since retired. Mayweather officially hung up the gloves in 2017 after he beat UFC superstar Conor McGregor, 33, in 10 rounds. But he has twice returned since, both in exhibition bouts, most recently against YouTuber Logan Paul, 26, in an 8-round pay-per-view spectacle. So what do you think? Who would likely win in this deadly face-off between Manny Pacquiao and Errol Spence Jr.? Let us know in the comments section below. If you know anything about boxing, make sure you check out the link in the description below for a detailed breakdown of more of this sport's greatest. In the meantime, don't forget to like, subscribe, and left hook the bell icon for future updates to our videos.